Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. 17 years of marriage doesn't unravel in a single night. Sometimes it fades so slowly you don't notice you're living with a shell of what used to be love, until someone finally decides to bury it. That's what happened to me. I didn't fully understand how broken things had become until I came home from the hospital and discovered my entire life had been quietly dismantled while I was lying unconscious on an operating table. My name is Brandon. Janet and I had been married since our mid-20s, back when we were young, full of hope and ready to build a future together. For more than 10 years, we had what most would call a stable, happy marriage. We bought a house, raised our daughter, Lillian, built careers, and settled into the kind of predictable routine that suburban couples do when life becomes more about responsibility than romance. But somewhere along the way, something vital between us broke. We started drifting slowly, quietly, from being partners to merely sharing the same space. There was no single moment I could point to, no clear event that marked the shift. It just happened little by little, until 3 years ago when things grew noticeably worse. Janet and I spoke only when necessary, about bills, about the house. We shared a bed but slept on opposite edges, carefully avoiding accidental contact, like strangers on a crowded subway. Affection disappeared completely. Not just intimacy, but even the small, casual touches that keep a marriage alive. I had long suspected Janet was having an affair, though I never had proof. There were no blatant lies or confrontations, just a string of subtle changes. She started dressing differently, putting more effort into her appearance before leaving the house. She took calls in other rooms, claiming they were private work conversations. She often told me she needed space, that she wanted to maintain her sense of individuality. But the biggest change was emotional. She withdrew completely. She no longer cared about my day, rarely responded when I tried to talk, and seemed completely checked out of our marriage. Whenever I tried to bring up how disconnected we'd become, she would dismiss my concerns, saying I was being too needy or had unrealistic expectations after so many years together. I never confronted her about cheating, partly because I had no hard evidence, partly because I wasn't sure I wanted to know the truth. What kept me in the marriage was Lillian. She was 16 then, in her final year of high school, focused on college applications and preparing to leave home. I didn't want to throw her life into chaos with a divorce during such a critical time. I told myself that once she left for college, Janet and I could finally have an honest conversation about whether we wanted to save the marriage or end it peacefully. What puzzled me was why Janet stayed. I was a primary provider, covering the mortgage, utilities, car payments, and most of Lillian's expenses, while Janet's part-time marketing job only covered her personal needs. She could have afforded a small apartment if she wanted to leave. It wasn't like she was staying for emotional connection. She'd been gone emotionally for years. I sometimes wondered if she was simply waiting, maybe for the right time to leave, maybe until she could secure a better financial position, or until things with the man she was seeing became serious enough. Either way, we were just going through the motions. When Lillian left for college, the house felt hollow. Without her energy, there was nothing to mask the emptiness between Janet and me. We barely interacted. Two people occupying the same house, like polite strangers in a hotel. Days would pass without us speaking beyond schedules or house tasks. It was around this time that I finally decided to deal with a medical issue I'd been putting off for years. When I was 32, I had been in a car accident that injured my lower back and left leg. Surgery had repaired the initial damage, but over time, scar tissue and bad healing caused chronic pain and limited my mobility. My orthopedic surgeon had been urging me for 3 years to get corrective surgery, but the recovery would mean weeks off work and strict physical limitations. Things I hadn't been ready to face. With Lillian settled at college and my work stable, I finally scheduled the procedure. I told both Janet and Lillian about the upcoming surgery, explaining it would be a major operation with a long recovery. Lillian was worried about missing classes to visit, but I reassured her it was routine and she should focus on school. Janet's reaction was indifferent. She acknowledged it, but didn't ask many questions. The surgery took place at City General Hospital. I drove myself there for the 4-hour procedure, which went well. The surgeon successfully removed the scar tissue and repaired the nerve damage that had caused my pain. When I woke up, Janet visited briefly to hear the good news, but she left after an hour, saying she had other things to do. What none of us expected was that the surgery would uncover more damage than scans had shown. 2 days later, I had to undergo another procedure to prevent long-term nerve damage. That second surgery brought complications, requiring pain management specialists and an extended hospital stay for physical therapy. My 5-day stay turned into nearly 3 weeks. For the first 2 weeks, I was bedridden, groggy from medication, exhausted from therapy. And during that entire time, Janet never came back. Not once. She never brought me anything from home, never sat with me, never met with doctors about my progress. The nurses even asked me occasionally if my wife would be attending my care meetings. I told myself I wasn't surprised, not after years of emotional distance, but it still hurt. At least she wasn't pretending to care more than she really did. Lillian called several times a week, and I kept things light for her sake. A few friends visited. One of them even commented, carefully, that he was surprised Janet wasn't around more. After 20 days, I was cleared to go home. I was weak, but eager to sleep in my own bed again, to have some privacy. Since Janet hadn't responded to my messages about my discharge, a close friend came to pick me up. The drive home was painful, but I was eager to see my house again. From the outside, everything looked normal, just as I'd left it. But when I unlocked the front door, I knew something was very wrong. The entryway was empty. The closet, umbrella stand, mail table, gone. For a moment, I thought we'd been robbed. But as I limped through the house, the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. The living room was stripped bare, couch, shelves, TV stand, all gone. The dining table and chairs, gone. Most of the kitchenware had disappeared. Upstairs, our bedroom had been emptied of Janet's things, along with shared furniture like the dresser and nightstands. My clothes were still in the closet, but almost everything else was gone. Lillian's room was untouched, which told me this wasn't a random burglary. Someone had chosen carefully what to take, and they'd used a key. I called Janet's phone, straight to voicemail. I tried 3 more times. Nothing. I checked our bank account. Empty. Janet had withdrawn everything just 3 days before. Hours later, I found a single folded note on the kitchen counter under a salt shaker. It read, "I can't do this anymore. Don't contact me." That was it. 17 years of marriage ended with a 1-line note. 3 days later, I was served divorce papers. Janet had filed for dissolution of marriage, asking for the house to be sold and assets divided. It was clear she had planned this for weeks, maybe months, waiting until I was physically helpless to make her exit. I filed a police report, but they said it was a civil matter. Morally, it felt like theft, but legally, she was entitled to take what she did. I called Lillian and told her what had happened, sticking to facts and leaving out my anger. She was devastated and said she had no idea her mom planned this. She offered to come home, but I told her to stay focused on school. With the house nearly empty, I moved into a friend's guest room and packed up what was left of my belongings. I hired a divorce attorney, who suggested we hire a private investigator. The PI quickly confirmed what I had suspected. Janet had been in a serious relationship for years and had moved in with her boyfriend. Days later, they both left the country. My lawyer recommended I finalize the divorce quickly. Fighting her terms would be expensive and likely pointless since she was gone. What Janet didn't know was that I had been preparing for this possibility for years. As our marriage fell apart, I quietly moved most of our significant assets into accounts she didn't know about. I kept up appearances, paid all expenses, but made sure I would protect it if things went bad. She believed the house, the joint account, and the furniture were half of everything we owned. In reality, what she took was only a fraction of my actual net worth. Replacing everything she had taken was emotionally exhausting, but financially easy. Within weeks, I had furnished a new home, one that reflected my taste, not compromises. The hardest part wasn't losing the furniture or the money. It was realizing she had deliberately timed this for when I was at my weakest, sedated, and helpless. She could have asked for a divorce any time in the past 3 years, but she chose cruelty instead. That told me everything I needed to know about who she really was. For months later, the divorce was finalized. She got half the house proceeds and whatever she had already taken, but never learned about the assets I had protected. Lillian's relationship with her mother never fully recovered, but mine with her grew stronger than ever. A year later, my life was calm, honest, and peaceful. Janet thought she had taken everything from me, but she actually gave me freedom and clarity. If she had left under normal circumstances, I might have wondered if we could have saved the marriage. But her choice to leave when she did erased any doubt. I learned 3 important lessons. Prepare financially as soon as you suspect your marriage might be failing. Understand that if someone can lie for years, they're capable of much more. And never rely on the legal system to protect you. Protect yourself first. In the end, Janet didn't ruin me. She set me free. Sometimes the cruelest betrayals turn out to be the start of something better, even if it doesn't feel like it at first.